Okay, let's see here. Yes, I do believe the term for this is, toxic friends. Following up on the previous episode and the premonition that their ancestors had left behind, Milky Holmes were confident that it was only a matter of time before their toys returned. Specifically, they were supposed to come back when they were to face a great test, and it just so happened that final exams were around the corner. Well, okay, that makes sense, and after seeing the upper tiers of what Cheryl was capable of, they had every right to be confident, so all they really needed to do was study a little and... Or they could be like that one bigger outside the Walmart who is also able to change their clothes every day. But yeah, 75% of this team was more focused on mooching some free samples from the department stores, which having been to some of these, yeah, they are way too generous. The remaining 25% was Ellie, who subtly throughout the episode was trying to get her friends to buckle down and study. Probably too subtly for these numbnuts. Not helping matters was a food expo where there was going to be even more free samples they could mooch off of, as well as a Vice Schwartz card tournament, which, okay, fair enough, those are required events to go to, especially when they have their own cards in that game. But yeah, blatant product placement aside, as indicated by the sad Sherlock Holmes statue, it was clear things weren't going to end well for our so-called heroines. Granted, I do like him better like this than what he looked like at the end of the last episode. Ew! As a result of our supposed heroines showing off the worst aspects of their personalities, the show rightfully shifted focus more onto the 3 cards of the Phantom Thief Empire. They just kind of randomly went into a flashback of the first day when they all met Arsene. All 3 of them tried to stake claim on the same prize while they were still independent thieves, resulting in some overly detailed close-ups of each of them. Though surprisingly, 20 wasn't the grossest, but rather, holy hell, get this dude a napkin. But yeah, just as all 3 were about to clash, Arsene came in with a ton of references. And yet, it's still nowhere near as mind-effy as the original. Though, at least it's not Thrice Upon a Time, because, yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, aside from this, I'm not really getting any more references here, if there are any, so do feel free to inform me in the comments if y'all recognize some references here. Anyway, after trapping them in some very spicy illusions, Arsene had managed to score herself a trio of Simps, underlings. Okay, that doesn't sound much better. To be fair, she did prove that she could lead this trio with her superior abilities, so it was understandable why they'd want to follow her, aside from the obvious. Not to mention, these 3 probably could use some leadership, especially when one of them freaked out over his self-huggy pillow cover being washed without his permission. We are just starting to put the finishing touches on the next part of the diary review, and I gotta say, I kind of wish Fuji P was more like this. This resulted in some more exaggerated animation, with Ishinagari even turning into a Baki character, which might or might not be foreshadowing for later. Unfortunately, we then cut back to our heroines who still hadn't even opened up a textbook aside from Ellie. We did at least see why they were so confident, in that they were excited to be moving out from their cramped little attic and back into their individual private rooms. It's actually kind of a clever little parallel with the 3 cards, who, in spite of constantly butting heads, had actually grown stronger by conglomerating with Arsene. Conversely, by looking forward to regaining their individual rooms and reverting back to the ununified team they were at the beginning of the series, Milky Holmes were at their weakest here. This is even cleverly symbolized the next day with the Sherlock Holmes statue facing away from them as they headed to their exams, as if to say even the legendary detective had turned his back on them. Again, I'm not gonna pretend like this is the deepest, most thought-provoking anime ever, but I do appreciate clever little touches like this is all. Anyway, the exams began and were led by, okay, this guy has to be a reference to someone. When you make a guy look actually Asian in an anime, then it either has to be some sort of celebrity guest star or a reference to someone. It wasn't the former, as this character was voiced by Shinji Kawada, a veteran VA, and while he does kind of look like him, I'm getting more director Hideaki Anno vibes. I mean, it would make sense after they just referenced one of his more infamous works, to say the least. Also, come on, would y'all be surprised if someone who looks like this does a few weird things in his free time? But yeah, not too surprisingly, Milky Holmes failed at all of their exams. Though to be fair, all of them were reliant on them getting their individual toys back, rather than anything they could have studied for, like Ellie needing her strength toys to move a freaking elephant. I mean, I get that it probably would have helped if they had actually tried to reactivate their toys over the whole week they had beforehand, but still, this was a little sloppily told even for this show. Regardless, this was still mostly hilarious stuff, other than maybe Ano possibly being a tad bit racist. I mean, I get that this is supposed to be a tan, but I don't think skin changes between cuts like that, oh boy. Anyway, Henriette took her former adversary's epic fails pretty well. Thus, she decided to give them an extra off-the-books test that night as her alter ego. With that, Milky Holmes tried to stop Arsenie's latest theft, and surprisingly, even managed to get the approval of Kokoro to go in. I mean, I do appreciate that she's not being a toll brat all the time, but still, it does feel like a bit of a sudden shift of her character when she's been mostly nothing but a jerk to Milky Holmes. Anyway, what did I say about these three being a good team? Yeah, again, these three proved to be the most entertaining part of this episode, even getting some of the funniest and most well-animated sequences. And yet, even though they were a trio of competing Simps for Arsenie's attention, that still meant that they had a unifying goal that allowed them to get one up on Milky Holmes with... You ought to realize that formation didn't exactly work out so well for the guys from Baki, right? Granted, Milky Holmes were still toysless, and each actually failed at every opportunity they could to use them to really hammer home their sorry states. To top it all off, Cheryl tried to save the day by using one of the barrel bombs from Nero's test, leading to the thieves managing to escape and forcing Kokoro to save them, with, I think, a J. Decker reference. Again, feel free to correct me in the comments. Anyway, for once, she rightfully kicked Milky Holmes out of the crime scene for royally screwing things up and even letting the thieves escape with the loot. Not that Arsenie herself was satisfied with this result. Pre-Kif and I wish they could be this dramatic anymore. Thus, the episode ended with some really good, dramatic, and detailed animation as Henriette destroyed their attic room under the rightful pretense that all of them were expelled for being hopeless causes. Hey Sora, you might want to make some room in the sulking corner. Yeah, this is a surprisingly solid little opener to the last arc of this season. It actually built up the character drama very well, whilst also fleshing out the characters on both sides of the conflict, in particular the three cards. And on top of that, some very flexible animation that manages to be both over the top at times and yet dramatically poignant by the end, and you get one of the best episodes of the season. Of all series, it's hard to imagine a show like Milky Holmes having any sort of dramatic build-up before its finale, and yet this managed to pull it off without feeling too disjointed for the rest of the series. I think it helps that there was a clear build-up to this falling out for our heroines, in that it was all basically karma, as in spite of getting some subtle development over the course of the season, they almost completely forgot about it when seemingly faced with an automatic solution to all of their troubles. And while it's not necessarily wrong to appreciate the apparent end to a long journey like theirs, it is wrong to forget about all of the lessons you learn along the way. In the case of Milky Holmes, they forgot about how much of a better team they had become without superpowers, and thus were rightfully punished for it. To cleverly contrast this, we got some development for the Phantom Thief Empire's cards, who, yeah, while still Simps for Arsenie, were at least able to show how they became a team and why they can be effective antagonists when they actually have a set goal in mind. They especially stood out thanks to some very fun sequences and animation. In general, a lot of work clearly went into this production. I mean, just look at that list of animators. And it was all for the benefit for making an overall fun, yet still well-told falling out tale for our protagonists. The grand finale to the season starts next time, and to say the least, they're not letting up on that accelerator. Hopefully by the end of this week, we should have the third part of the Fadai review out. That is, unless I feel like we need to add any more to it, which honestly I kind of doubt. Yeah, if you know this part of the OG series, then you should know what are some of the issues with it. And until then though, for now my friends, and hey, who spilled all this orange juice all over the floor?